Hello, everybody. I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings. And, yes, cat who, again, look at the cat. Let the cat look into your soul. Enjoy that there is a cat, assuming you're a cat person, because I know there are people who are not cat people, who are, in fact, anti-cat people. And you will never understand the joy of having something look at you and ask, why is it that you think that you run this house? I run this house. I am a god. Because I am a cat. Because cats. Um, yeah, that's the fundamental divide between dog people and cat people. One group says that they love the fact that their pets look down on them, and the other says, why do you want your pet to look down on you? Um, in any event, we're not here to discuss the fact that cat people and dog people fundamentally cannot agree because the positions from which they are coming are fundamentally opposed. But anyways, cat who books. So, that's right, it was on the other side. So the cat who went bananas. The bananas in this is another tangential title. Qwilleran is told by his doctor, at some point outside the bounds of this book, that he should really start being more careful with his diet and that bananas would be good. This was actually published in 2006, if I recall correctly, so there's a theoretical possibility that Doctor Who was involved in this, but probably not. I suspect that the Doctor's banana fetish has nothing to do with this. Nevertheless, Qwilleran tries to follow his doctor's advice and work more bananas into his diet. And he has the usual trouble that people have with bananas. You know that thing where you get bananas and they just, like, turn brown overnight, and then it's awful because you don't make banana bread and you don't know anyone who does, and so you can either have the brown, slightly squishy banana, or you can throw it out because it's brown and squishy. And then he eventually gets recommended that he get a banana rack, and apparently, you can make a good banana rack out of a wire coat hanger, which, I don't know, because, I mean, if the bananas are heavy enough, wire coat hangers are super easy to bend at times, and I get the theory behind it, but I really think that, you would want something a little bit sturdier than a wire hanger, but I don't know. Maybe, all one people listening who are not me when I, do a run through of this to check that it got recorded properly. Maybe you, might have some idea of how right or wrong I am on the concept of wire hangers as banana hook things. In any event, so this starts with Qwilleran being asked to effectively use his quill pen column to introduce Pickaxe County to the idea of Oscar Wilde plays, because the Pickaxe Theater Club organization, whatever they're called, decide they're going to put on The Importance of Being Earnest, which is a play that is sort of the temperament of the 19th century. It's very dialogue heavy. It's very much about the wit and the wordplay that are that are Wilde's hallmarks and that sort of thing. Or was it Shaw? Anyways, it's out of that brand of play that you get from Bernard Shaw and Oscar Wilde and so on and so forth. And so while they felt that Pickaxe County had sufficient humor to get it, to find it funny, they wanted Quill to sort of introduce people to it to get them into the appropriate frame of mind, because, the humor between Bugs Bunny, between The Importance of Being Earnest, between, the stand-up comedians of the late 20th, early 21st century. These are all very qualitatively different, and sometimes a person who doesn't have their metaphorical ear tuned to that can have trouble sort of coping with it. Just ask any high school student asked to read so-called modern English plays in which nobody they know has ever talked like that. So Quill gets asked to introduce the play, sort of in his column as kind of a setup so that the play will go over well with people. And the thing is that this is not much of a mystery, really. I mean, there's a mystery in that one young man dies because he was driving under the influence of uppers or some other sort of drug that he took, and everyone says, but he never took drugs. And there's a man's wife who got shot by a sniper, and that mystery is never properly solved, and there's a woman, and there's, a house that burns down, and at the end of it, the gentleman who is kind of at issue throughout this whole book, because Eldon Wade, whose proper name was actually apparently George Wade, Eldon Wade is he's a character at issue through the whole book. He is urbane and sophisticated and interesting and an excellent actor and highly literary and very much a ladies' man. And as the book goes on, we get introduced to people repeatedly saying, well, I don't like him, I can't put my finger on it. And one young man who insists that Alden murdered his mother. And, and at the end of the book, we hear that the poor young man who died at the start of this book because he was driving while high, apparently, that it might have been Alden who gave him the drugs in the first place, suggesting that, taking uppers is something that people do in the theater, which I'm sure some people do, because there's always somebody who does. But, Alden is very much at issue, and Coco doesn't like him, and Coco keeps pushing a book off the shelf by an author, George Ade, because Alden's real name is George. And, we're meant to see this as Coco implying that Eldon Wade murdered people and, various other things. But in the end, the murder isn't solved, and it isn't solved, the murders, the deaths, they aren't solved to my satisfaction, and I don't think to anyone's satisfaction. And in the end, this book becomes less of a mystery and more of just a slice of life. It becomes, Qwilleran worrying about Polly, who stresses herself out with the bookstore. It becomes talking about Dundee, the marmalade cat, who's going to live in that bookstore because they've now believed that having a cat is necessary to a bookstore. It's talking about, Qwilleran's usual struggles with his column. It's a book that Qwilleran is in the process of producing about, I believe it's Hill House. It's a particular mansion that an older woman in the town owns, which is made entirely out of wood, and there's sort of this idea that Quill is going to put together a book about that house because it's so unusual and interesting to look at and has such an interesting history and has been part of Moose County for so long. And it's it's about all of these things. It's about Qwilleran's usual dealing with the cats and having to deal with the cats, and our regular cast of characters. Mildred and Arch Riker have faded somewhat over time. They're still present. Quill still has the occasional meal with them, but they're becoming less prominent as these books go on. And it's an enjoyable book, but there's this odd sense that the mystery of it is just completely gone by the wayside, that we are simply not going to have a mystery with this book. And I'm not precisely complaining, but I do genuinely feel like at this point, like this one, uh, it's a little paint by numbers in some ways. I enjoyed it, but I'm not sure at this point that we can really call it a mystery. And it's something that these books have been slowly working towards, because maybe I missed it, but I feel like if I missed it, it's because I blinked and I missed it. As I said, Eldon Wade, it doesn't really go anywhere. Quill likes Eldon Wade, but Coco is suspicious of him, and perforce Quill is suspicious of him. But, Alden dies trying to rescue a dog from a fire, so what are we going to do about it? The only genuine evidence of a real misdemeanor on Alden Wade's part is that one of the other people living in the house, in that boarding house with him, found a book that was declared missing, that Eldon Wade had reported missing from the new bookstore, but is in fact in Alden's, rooms. I'm not entirely certain of what's going on there. So it's certainly enjoyable. It's certainly a fun read. But the thing is that this Hibbard House project that Quill does, it's an excuse for him to go everywhere and talk to everybody and ask questions about the house. But I just I have trouble with this one. And I'll admit I'm a little bit scrambling for things to say about it, all things considered. So I think I'm going to just wrap this up, and I will see you all next week.